Okay, so I want you to just picture something for a second.
All right, lay it on her.
Imagine you were driving down this pitch black stretch of highway. It is exactly 2:11 a.m., and you are caught in the middle of this freezing thunderstorm.
Oh, man, the absolute worst kind of driving conditions.
Right, exactly. The kind of rain that just violently lashes against your windshield, completely blurring your vision.
Yeah, terrifying.
And as your headlights sweep across the asphalt, you see him. There is a man, completely naked, barefoot, walking calmly down the middle of Route 9.
While massive semi-trucks are just swerving around him in the dark.
Yes, and he doesn't have a single scratch on him.
It is just, it's such an incredibly striking image, right? Because it's completely disjointed from the physical reality of that environment.
Completely, and that's exactly what we're digging into today. You are looking at this crazy collision of medical impossibility and, well, the supernatural.
Oh, absolutely.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are opening up a classified incident report titled The Anatomy of the Hollow Man.
Such a chilling title.
I know, right? And our mission here is to basically track the exact sequence of events that led to the permanent military-enforced sealing of St. Mercy Hospital. We need to unpack this source material and figure out how, human biology became a vessel for something that fundamentally breaks all of our physical laws.
Yeah, and this report, it really forces you to look at the human body, not as a closed autonomous system, but as a potential container.
Ooh, a container, right?
Exactly. It asks, what actually happens when that container is emptied out and then occupied by an entirely different ecosystem?
The sheer bizarre setup of his arrival is really what hooks you in. So Highway Patrol finds this guy wandering nearly 30 miles outside the city limits.
Right in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Officer Ray Molina is the first responder to make contact. And the source specifically notes that the man didn't resist. He didn't speak.
Didn't even shiver from the freezing rain, right?
Not once. And he didn't even blink. Molina actually wrote in his report that the stranger simply turned toward the blinding patrol car lights and offered this faint smile.
And that smile is a crucial detail here.
Yeah.
Because Molina specifically documented it as the most disturbing part of the whole encounter. He described it not as threatening or even insane, but utterly devoid of human context.
Wow.
It was just empty.
And that word empty, it basically becomes the clinical baseline for this entire event. Because when the paramedics finally get him into the back of the ambulance, the physical realities they document, it should mean they have a literal corpse on their hands.
Yeah, medically speaking, it makes zero sense.
The patient has absolutely no detectable heartbeat, zero pulse. His skin is as cold as a body pulled straight from a morgue refrigerator.
But he is breathing normally.
Yes. Slow, steady, rhythmic breaths.
Which is, the ultimate paradox for any first responder. Medically, after wandering naked in freezing rain, this man should be in profound hypovolemic or cardiogenic shock.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning his heart should be failing to pump blood, or his whole vascular system should be collapsing from the extreme thermal loss.
Right.
Without a beating heart, your cells aren't getting oxygen. So if he is drawing breath into his lungs, but there is no circulatory system to distribute that oxygen, where is the air actually going?
That is wild to think about.
Yeah, he simply isn't operating on a human biological paradigm anymore.
So one of the medics tries to check his pupillary response, right, with a little pen light.
Standard procedure, yeah.
But the light doesn't just illuminate the eye. It reflects back out in this weird way. The report describes it as a silver sheen, like hitting a mirror in a pitch-dark room.
So creepy.
And that is the exact moment the patient leans forward and whispers his very first words to the paramedics.
This gives me chills.
He just whispers, "Don't open me."
Notice how the anomaly isn't a deficit here.
What do you mean?
Well, he isn't lacking life, right? The emptiness is actually his defining feature. It challenges absolutely everything those paramedics are trained to triage.
It's totally mind-bending. I was trying to figure out how to even visualize this biological impossibility for myself.
It's tough to wrap your head around.
It really is. It's like finding a hollowed-out laptop sitting on a desk, and it's perfectly streaming a 4K movie.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. You look closely and you realize there is no battery, there's no motherboard, no processor. It's just an empty plastic shell, but the movie just keeps playing flawlessly. How is it powered? Where is the data coming from?
Yeah, and if we take that laptop analogy just a step further, it explains the mechanism perfectly.
Okay, how so?
The processing isn't happening in the plastic shell at all. It's happening on a remote server.
Oh, wow.
The man isn't a biological organism anymore. He is functioning as a biological router.
A router.
Exactly. He is connecting our physical reality to wherever this anomalous data is actually stored. And as we see, that remote connection becomes terrifyingly literal during the hospital examination.
It really does. So they transport him to St. Mercy Hospital. Dr. Amelia Vance takes over the examination in the trauma bay.
The lead attending, right?
Yeah. She's looking at a male, maybe mid-30s. She notes there are no scars, no tattoos, no signs of any past surgeries. But then she examines his hands.
This part is wild.
He has no fingerprints. His fingertips are completely smooth. And they aren't burned off or obscured by scar tissue or anything. The skin is pristine. They are just totally blank.
Right. Dr. Vance is looking at hands that possess zero friction ridges.
Which shouldn't happen naturally.
Not at all. Biologically, the blueprints for our fingerprints are formed in the womb well before we're even born.
Right.
So to have entirely smooth fingertips without any physical trauma, it implies a retrocausal alteration of his genetics.
Meaning his past was changed.
Basically, yes. Or that the body she is examining is merely a simulacrum, like a perfect, freshly manufactured copy of a human form that just happened to miss a few microscopic details.
Okay, that is terrifying. But Dr. Vance, she doesn't panic. Her clinical training just kicks in and she orders a full series of x-rays to figure out what the heck is happening internally.
A logical next step.
Right, but this is the exact moment in the report where the situation tips from a weird medical puzzle into just a localized nightmare.
Oh, definitely.
The x-ray technician actually recalibrates the imaging machine twice, assuming it has to be broken. Because the scans show that the patient's torso is entirely empty.
Just completely vacant.
Yeah, there are no lungs, no stomach, no liver, kidneys, or intestines. Just this massive hollow cavern sitting right under the rib cage. It is quite literally an empty shell.
A living, breathing human being sitting upright with absolutely zero internal organs. I mean, the structural physics alone.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, think about how his torso hasn't just collapsed inward without the density of those organs and the core musculature supporting the skeletal frame. It's impossible.
I didn't even think about that. Imagine you are Dr. Vance sitting in that dark imaging room. The entire trauma team just falls dead silent staring at the light board.
You could probably hear a pin drop.
Exactly. And one nurse simply whispers out loud, "How is he standing?" And nobody answers her. And right through the glass observation window, the patient is just watching them, still offering that exact same faint smile.
This is the real turning point, I think, where the environment itself begins to warp.
Yeah.
The entity transitions from being a passive medical curiosity to an active environmental hazard.
It's exactly 3:07 a.m. The power grid throughout the entire hospital flickers violently. The emergency backup generators immediately kick on.
Right.
But at that exact millisecond, every single medical monitor connected to the patient flatlines simultaneously.
Just a chorus of flatlines.
And the report specifically clarifies that they didn't flatline because the patient expired. They flatlined because the machines simply stopped detecting anything human.
Which is terrifying.
Zero body temperature, zero blood pressure, zero electrical activity in the brain.
Because the monitors are desperately searching for human telemetry, and suddenly there's just nothing left to measure.
But wait, let me push back on that for just a second.
Sure.
Because if he's this active anomaly altering the physics of the room, wouldn't the monitors spike with some kind of anomalous energy rather than just flatlining? Like a flatline implies nothing is there, but clearly something massive is happening.
See, that is precisely what makes it so terrifying. Medical machines are highly calibrated instruments, right? They're designed to detect very specific bioelectrical markers.
That's by heartbeat.
Right, the sinus rhythm of a heart or the heat signature of mammalian blood. The anomaly isn't registering as an energy spike because it isn't emitting our universe's type of energy at all.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The flatline basically proves that whatever was loosely impersonating human biology just dropped the disguise. The hardware completely disconnected from our reality.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the physical world rushes in to fill that void.
Exactly.
The sensory details in the report shift drastically here. It isn't just electrical interference anymore. It becomes completely biological. The emergency wing is suddenly flooded with this heavy odor of wet earth and rotting leaves.
It's an intrusion of a completely foreign biome.
The report literally describes it as smelling like freshly opened graves after a heavy rain.
So gross.
It is so overpowering that nurses are getting nauseous. One actually vomits right there because she gets close enough to notice this thick dirt packed underneath the patient's smooth fingernails.
And it's not normal dirt either.
No, it's not normal hospital dirt. It's this dense, black soil threaded with these tiny, pulsing red roots.
Unbelievable.
Dr. Vance tries to interrogate him. She asks him where he came from. He just tilts his head and whispers, "Inside."
And she asks, inside what?
Right. And his smile stretches unnaturally wide across his face, and he says, "The hollow place."
The soil, those red roots, that sudden atmospheric shift. You have to realize these aren't just spooky horror elements.
What are they then?
They're forensic evidence. He is acting as a biological terraformer.
A terraformer.
Exactly. He is actively pulling the ecosystem of that hollow place directly into the trauma bay, essentially overlapping its physical coordinates with the hospital room.
Which means once a hospital becomes an active interdimensional hazard, standard medical protocols just completely evaporate.
They're useless.
The concept of hollowness stops being just a clinical description of his x-rays, and it becomes an active predatory contagion.
And the transition from patient to predator, it happens incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And it completely defies spatial logic.
It's 3:33 a.m. now. Nurse Valerie Kemp disappears while she's checking supplies near the morgue hallway.
The security footage of this is just pure nightmare fuel.
Truly. The report details the camera showing Valerie stopping suddenly in the empty hall. She turns her head as if she hears something calling to her from a dark maintenance corridor.
And who is standing there?
Standing right there in the shadows is the smiling patient. But here's the totally impossible part. The patient never actually left his hospital room.
Right.
The simultaneous footage from his room shows him still firmly strapped to his bed, watching the door, while simultaneously projecting himself into the hallway shadows to draw Valerie in.
This phenomenon of bilocation, it really emphasizes the true nature of the threat. The Hollow Man is no longer a single, bounded biological entity.
Right.
He is a doorway. And that doorway can apparently cast a shadow across entirely different physical locations all at once.
They find Valerie's body 2 hours later in an unused operating room. And the description is just chilling.
It's horrifying.
Her corpse had collapsed inward. Her skin was perfectly intact. Her skeletal structure was completely unbroken. But she was totally hollow inside.
Yeah.
Every single organ beneath the flesh had been cleanly removed. There was absolutely no blood, no surgical incisions, just an emptied human wrapper.
It's so disturbing.
I kept trying to understand the physics of this attack. It's like a reverse black hole, you know? It's like whatever is inside him is reaching out and just deleting their internal matter.
Well, a reverse black hole is a great starting point for the visual, but think about it biologically for a second.
Okay.
It's not deletion, it is spatial folding.
Spatial folding.
Yes. The entity is overlapping the pocket dimension of the hollow place with the exact physical coordinates of the nurse's internal organs.
Oh, man.
It is actively swapping matter, pulling her insides directly into the void without ever having to break the surface tension of her skin.
Jesus, put yourself in the shoes of the hospital security team, right? They rush to the patient's room only to find it completely empty.
And he didn't even unbuckle anything.
Nope. The heavy leather restraints are still locked perfectly around the steel bed rails, but he slipped right through them. They just find these wet, muddy footprints walking vertically up the plaster wall and disappearing into the ventilation grates in the ceiling.
And then the sounds start echoing through the building.
Oh, the sounds.
It's total psychological warfare. The auditory intrusions alone would drive you mad.
The incident report notes that staff and patients started hearing this heavy, slow breathing inside the walls.
But not just one person.
Exactly. It wasn't just one person breathing. It was multiple sets of lungs crawling through the aluminum vents overhead. The emergency lights are flickering everywhere. Patients across multiple floors are waking up screaming, frantically pressing their call buttons. They're claiming a man was standing silently beside their beds in the dark, just watching them sleep.
Oh, creepy.
And one pediatric patient actually gave him a name that perfectly captured the terror of it all. The kid just called him the Empty Man.
See, the anomaly is now actively defining itself in the eyes of the witnesses. It has completely shed the identity of a trauma patient.
By dawn, 7 people have vanished from the hospital wards, and every single recovered body matched Valerie's condition perfectly.
Hollowed out.
Hollowed out, perfectly intact skin, completely emptied. Dr. Amelia Vance retreats to the imaging room, desperately reevaluating the patient's original x-rays, just searching for any tiny details she might have missed.
She is trying to apply scientific deduction to an entity that has already fundamentally broken the laws of physics.
And she finds something horrifying.
Yeah.
She is staring at the negative space in the scans of his torso cavity. and she realizes it isn't completely empty.
No, it's not.
There are faint, ghostly shapes appearing in the void. As she adjusts the contrast on the screen, the shapes become clear. They are human silhouettes.
Trapped inside him.
She can see faces, mouths wide open, silently screaming beneath his skin, pressing outward from the inside.
If the torso is filled with screaming faces, it completely changes the entire threat matrix.
How so?
Well, he is no longer just a passive doorway, right? He is an active collection mechanism. It forces you to wonder what the actual carrying capacity of that void is.
Officer Ray Molina is still at the hospital during all this, and when he hears about the scans, everything suddenly clicks for him.
He remembers the ambulance.
Yes, he remembered the whisper in the back of the ambulance, "Don't open me." Molina realizes it was never a threat. It was a warning label on a sealed container.
But the hospital didn't know that.
No, they didn't. They applied standard diagnostic procedures, which directly triggered the climax.
They took an interdimensional container and placed it inside an extreme magnetic field.
Exactly. It's 8:12 a.m. Blood-curdling screams erupt from the radiology department. The trauma team runs in and finds their multi-million-dollar MRI machine literally torn apart from the inside out.
Just shredded.
The reinforced casing is peeled backward like crushed tinfoil. And sitting perfectly still inside the ruined scanner is the patient.
Still smiling, I bet.
He is still smiling, but his chest is hanging open vertically. It isn't cut with a scalpel or anything. It is just opened, like a wooden cabinet swinging on hinges.
It's reducing the human form to a piece of architecture.
Inside that open chest is a void, an endless black darkness that is far deeper than the human body could ever physically contain. And inside that darkness, people are moving.
It's so bleak.
Dozens of pale, writhing human shapes are trapped far inside the blackness, just clawing their way toward the opening, and one face emerges briefly into the fluorescent hospital light.
Valerie.
It is Nurse Valerie. She is still alive in there. Her mouth opens soundlessly before something deep in the dark violently drags her backward into the void. The patient looks out from the ruined MRI, his chest still hanging wide open, and he speaks his final recorded words. He says, "They were lonely."
They were lonely. You know, it is a tragic statement, but it's incredibly mocking at the same time.
What do you mean by mocking?
It implies the void isn't just empty space. It is a sentient prison of trapped consciousness. It essentially uses a hollowed-out human body to infiltrate our reality, gathering more victims just to feed whatever terrible loneliness exists in that place.
The mechanics of the MRI scene are just fascinating to me. I mean, imagine seeing your colleague, someone you just shared a shift with, dragged back into a bottomless void inside a stranger's chest cavity.
It's unfathomable trauma.
But consider the physics of it for a second. An MRI generates a superconducting magnetic field that is tens of thousands of times stronger than the Earth's magnetic pull, right?
Right, incredibly powerful.
So, did the sheer magnetic force of the machine rip the door open and break the spatial anchor? Or did the entity just decide it had gathered enough people and the chaos of the MRI was merely a convenient moment to reveal itself?
That's a terrifying intersection of physics and dimensional anchoring. If the doorway relied on the physical integrity of the host body to remain closed, pulling that body into a 3 Tesla magnetic field could certainly compromise the containment.
It makes sense.
The magnets might have literally pulled the spatial coordinates apart. However, given the entity's deliberate hunting patterns, its bilocation, and that mocking final phrase, it is equally plausible that the container simply chose to unlock.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, once that chest opens, the hospital just descends into absolute chaos. The lights die entirely. Security cameras only catch these fragmented, strobe-lit glimpses of what happens next.
Total panic.
Doctors running. Patients frantically barricading themselves in rooms. The Hollow Man walking calmly from floor to floor with these human shadows visibly pushing against the inside of his skin.
And he's not even attacking them in a traditional sense.
No, anyone he touches isn't killed. They're instantly absorbed, just pulled inward. So the question becomes, how does an institution actually respond to an impossible, expanding, interdimensional threat like this? They can't cure it, so they resort to the only tool they have left.
Containment and systematic erasure.
Exactly.
The institutional panic overrides any attempt at an actual rescue.
The military arrives just before noon, in full hazard gear. They violently evacuate whatever staff and patients are left on the perimeter, and they permanently weld the doors of St. Mercy Hospital shut.
Just sealing them all in.
They pour concrete over all the ground floor windows. And the official, fabricated cover story that gets fed to the public is a, quote, Class 4 biohazard contamination leak.
Naturally.
The incident report explicitly notes that the missing staff and the hollowed-out corpses were completely omitted from every public record, and they buried the final piece of security footage recovered from the MRI wing's backup server.
See, the military relies on the biohazard narrative because it is the only template the public will accept without causing mass hysteria.
Right, you can't really issue a FEMA alert for an interdimensional flesh prison.
Exactly. But that final 19-second video, it completely reveals the catastrophic failure of their entire containment strategy.
The video shows a squad of soldiers cornering the patient in a subterranean utility room. They have their rifles raised, lasers trained right on his chest.
He's just standing there.
The man stands perfectly still in the beam of their flashlights. And slowly, he reaches up and opens his chest cavity again.
Oh, man.
But this time, darkness just pours outward across the floor like heavy liquid smoke. And as the smoke clears, the camera captures what is waiting inside him.
The scale of it.
Thousands of human faces are staring back out at the soldiers. Thousands of them. Waiting. Hungry. And breathing together in the dark.
The sheer volume of faces is the terrifying variable here. It completely changes the scale of the threat.
How so?
The military thought they were containing a localized event, but they didn't solve the problem at all. They couldn't neutralize the anomaly, so they simply built a bigger box around the original box.
Well, wow.
Yeah, they turned an entire metropolitan hospital into the new container.
But that institutional logic is so flawed, right? By sealing the hospital and abandoning it, haven't they just given him a massive empty playground?
Pretty much.
He's locked inside the building, sure, but he completely owns that space now.
They traded a solution for a localized quarantine. But as we already saw with the leather restraints and the ventilation shafts, this entity does not abide by physical boundaries.
Right, he slips right through them.
A welded door and a concrete window mean absolutely nothing to an entity that can spatially fold a human being into a pocket dimension without breaking their skin. St. Mercy Hospital isn't a cage.
What is it?
It is just a waiting room.
That is, wow. Okay, to recap this absolutely terrifying sequence of events.
Yeah.
We started with a barefoot man walking unharmed down a freezing, rain-slicked highway.
Seemingly innocent enough, right?
Right. He presented first responders with absolute medical impossibilities, no pulse, no fingerprints, no internal organs, which then rapidly escalated into an active contagion of hollowness. It ultimately culminated in the military locking down an entire hospital that now serves as the outer shell for a walking void. It is a brutal reminder of just how fragile our grasp on reality truly is.
So fragile.
We build our entire lives around the rigid laws of physics and biology, right up until a man with an empty torso walks into an emergency room and simply deletes them.
It really forces you to acknowledge that our scientific models only apply to the observable systems we currently understand.
Right.
When an outside system intrudes, bringing its own physics and its own hunger, our models collapse instantly.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final haunting piece of math based strictly on the incident report we just explored.
Okay, let's hear it.
The source explicitly noted that only 7 people vanished at the hospital by dawn. Add in Valerie and maybe a few dozen more staff members who were taken before the military arrived and sealed the doors.
Right.
Let's be generous and say 50 people were absorbed total at the hospital. But that final 19-second video showed thousands of faces waiting inside his chest.
Thousands.
So the next time you are driving down a dark, empty highway late at night, gripping the steering wheel while the rain lashes against your windshield, you have to wonder, how long has he actually been walking and where did all those other people come from?